material, but today we're going to be moving at a good clip. Today we're going to be finishing chapter 10 because next week, that's your entire test is on chapter 10, next Wednesday. This Friday, we're going to have our test 2 in this class, and you guys got the study guide. You guys all received that, right? Okay. I sent it out over email. If you didn't get it, let me know. So we're going to be also on Friday, after you're done with the test, I'm going to be asking you to stay long enough to do one more survey. We have a community engagement survey that basically you get to report out to the Center for Community Engagement on what you thought about the service that you did this semester. So you let them know how we're doing with that. A couple folks did not do the Chapter 6 exercise or the Chapter 8 and 9 online quiz. This is last call for those. And also, guys, I need you to record your hours for your service. This is what we have, guys. When I'm reading this out, you guys have all done the work. I just need you to log them for you. You need to have at least 5 hours logged. Lily, you got to log your hours yet? Joel, you got to finish. Jojo, you got to finish logging your hours yet? Jonas, you haven't logged your hours yet. Emily, Rhiannon, Juan's not here yet. Corey, and I have your work for you after class. Trust me, it'll eat up your time just fine. We have Sarah. You have 2 hours logged. You need to log your other 3. Christian needs to log the rest of his because you did yours this week. Avery, you got to log yours as well. Zach and Ian's not here, but Ian's got to log his. Yes. Yeah, right now, let me go back here. Yeah, you're showing up as 0 being logged. But that's okay. I know you did them. Just, guys, so long as you have 5 hours showing, and when I say this, I'm not telling you to lie on your hours. I'm saying you probably did more work than you thought you did. I guarantee everybody in this room did at least 5 hours in terms of the time we went back and forth, prep time discussing it after class. Make sure your hours add up to at least 5. That's the requirement. Yes. If you go onto Canvas under Community Engagement, right on top, go to Modules, Community Engagement on the top. In fact, I'm giving you permission to do this during class today. Please, if you have not finished logging your hours, Corey, you can even log yours in advance because you're going to be doing some tabulation. If you go into Modules, up top, take a second, and it says here, let's here is class. It was that one line. Right. It was one line. Go ahead to 201, go to Modules. You should see right up top, service hours. Okay, guys, please log those today if you're not finished with them. That way everybody is in good shape. Ian, you need to log your service hours. You need to log 5 of those in. And also, because you're late, if you have not done Chapter 6 or the Chapter 8 and 9 online quiz, those are overdue. All right, guys, before we jump in today, any questions? We know we got a test this Friday. You guys know what it's on. You know we have a test next Wednesday on one chapter. After I cover that chapter today, I will send you a review sheet for this one as well. What I will do to eliminate confusion, however, is send this out Friday afternoon so that you're not studying 2 different study sheets at the same time. You understand what I'm talking about? Because the study sheet I sent you for this Friday is 4 chapters. Next week, you have a 1-chapter test. That way, nobody gets confused. We all good? Okay. All right, guys. We're going to be moving quickly today. In terms of performance appraisals and ethics, help me out on this, guys. In terms of ethics, what we want to make sure is that people who are trained to do performance evaluations are ethically evaluating people. They're not showing bias, that we've got codes of conduct in place. Anytime we're communicating an ethical culture to our people, we can evaluate them on how well they live up to it. An example would be if you've got somebody who works in accounting, somebody who works in finance, you would want to evaluate them for their honesty. For example, are they living up to your ethical cultures? So some people put that onto a performance evaluation as well. Now, in terms of who does the performance appraisal, here's the way it typically works, guys. Here's the division. Generally speaking, HR department comes up with the appraisal process, hopefully in partnership with the department that's actually doing the appraisal. I know we talked about this last class. Why might it be better for somebody in a department to be doing an evaluation of an employee than somebody from HR? So if we have somebody, for example, at St. Francis, why might it be better for Dr. Fry to do my appraisal than for HR to do my appraisal? They understand me. They know the job I do. They know what it takes to be successful. That's exactly why we tend to distribute that stuff. Now, we have several different kinds of appraisals. We can use the informal appraisals, as we discussed last time. Might be walking around and saying, for example, Jared, you're doing a good job today. You guys are doing great work out here. Keep up the good work. As opposed to doing a formal written evaluation. In a perfect world, we have a little bit of both. So we've got people getting constant feedback. Now, a systematic approach means that we are setting times and we're having a formal sit-down actually talking about your appraisal. Communication can be over email, can be in writing. We've got a system for tracking this stuff. In terms of the timing of these appraisals, as we mentioned last class, sometimes we will do these appraisals at the beginning, middle, and end of the year. Generally speaking, it's better if we do them more frequently. And we can also decide who's going to provide input on this stuff. For example, as you guys are my primary audience, my customers, you guys give me feedback in addition to my boss. So it makes sense in many workplaces that we have a similar kind of scenario. It's very common for us to rate the people who work for us, but it's not uncommon for having employees rate their supervisor either. Let's say, for example, Zach works for me. I have a little bit of power over him because he works for me, he reports to me. Is there a chance, for example, that Zach might not be happy with the way he's being managed? Is that a possibility? What do you think, Zach? It's a possibility, right? Yeah, and the other thing is, too, no human is infallible. Meaning, it would make a lot of sense to ask Zach, how's Tonkin doing as a manager? Because communication and right and wrong go both ways. So it makes a lot of sense in an organization to have people also evaluate their managers sometimes, too. Well, what about having people rate each other? Let me ask you guys, if I had a time in this class where instead of me giving you your grades, I had you grade each other, how do you think it would work out? Yeah, we would tend to be lenient against each other, wouldn't we? Thank you for that. We would tend to be lenient on it. Hey, Juan, don't forget to log your service hours. Okay, you can do that in class today, too. Make sure you got fun. We would tend to be lenient against each other. As a result, if we were doing performance-based pay, well, actually, let's reverse the scenario. We got two scenarios in this class where you rate each other and there's no limit on grades. Everybody can get an A. Versus, I'm handing out a total of 5 A's and you guys have to rate each other. What's different about those two scenarios? You got it. People are going to be harder on each other whenever it's competitive, for example. What do you think, guys? When we rate ourselves, do we tend to be harder or more lenient on ourselves? What do you think? Well, show of hands, who thinks that they're their own worst critic? Yeah, many of us are. I think one of the fallacies is assuming that when we have employees rate themselves, that they're going to give themselves an easy pass. When in reality, a lot of the time, people are harsher on themselves than other folks would be. But it also is a good thing for us to include. If I don't see myself as doing a good job, but I am doing a good job according to my supervisor, maybe I need to adjust my frame of reference. We can also have people outside the organization come in and rank our employees from a completely objective standpoint. When you say, hey, we're going to have outside individuals coming in to rate you, how do most people respond to that? Are they excited about it or not? No. What's their immediate assumption? What do you think, guys? Yeah, somebody's come in to put me on report. We can also do something called 360-degree feedback. 360-degree feedback means you got one person who's getting evaluated by all these sources, between the manager, the coworkers, subordinate self, and even the customers. This can be very stressful, but all these folks may have different things to say about somebody. For example, a customer who's getting bad service and giving a manager a poor evaluation may not realize the position itself is also poorly designed. It can be a good thing because it gives us multiple types of feedback, but it can be challenging as well. For developmental use, we might be able to tell how is this manager, how is this person doing in the eyes of multiple people. From an administrative use, again, just like we would do for a normal performance evaluation, we can use it for raises, we can use it for termination as well. So developmental use, again, write this down. Developmental use means we're using it to help people get better. Please write this down. We're using it to help people get better at their jobs. We're using it for developmental use. We're using it for administrative use, performance evaluation. It means we're helping people either get raises or, unfortunately, helping some folks get terminated. Now, we rate people sometimes on different scales. Sometimes we have a graphic rating scale. For example, we can rate somebody high to low. Are they doing good or not? We can use descriptive categories such as, is somebody showing up frequently or not? How are they performing on their job duties? How are they doing in terms of behavioral duties? When we think graphics, we're thinking things like charts. Is somebody going up into the upper right-hand corner, or are they in the lower left? Generally speaking, if you have high performance, it's going to be up in the higher right. So we can use a graphics chart, for example. We can also put it into numerical forms. For example, we can rate somebody on specific criteria on a 1 to 5 scale, what we call a Likert scale. Now here's the trick, guys. When you're asked to evaluate somebody on a 1 to 5 scale, why is that sometimes difficult? Yeah, it can be vague. What does a 5 actually mean? So we've got to be able to well define those standards. And the other thing, too, sometimes if we're given a chance to operate where we've got a 1 to 5 scale, and we're not completely sure, what score do we give? Yeah, we have a central tendency. It's not good, it's not bad. Nobody's getting a raise, but nobody's getting fired either. So that's a problem with a graphic rating scale. Some of the ways that we sometimes will give final ratings, we might say that we have outstanding, exceeds expectations, or meets expectations. I think that exceeds expectations and outstanding are terrible things to have on performance evaluations. Why do I think that? Well, let's say, for example, let's pick somebody. It's Becky's first year working for me, and she's absolutely kicking ass. And so she got exceeds expectations. She was great her first year. Well, the second year, she's been here, and she knows this place. Well, I think I'm going to give her a meets expectations this year. How do you feel about that?
Am I still exceeding the expectations?
Well, you exceeded the first year. In the second year, I gave you a meets expectation because you really haven't gotten any better since the first year. And it could be because I raised my expectations because you exceeded it.
So it kind of makes me feel bad that, like, somebody else doesn't have the same expectations.
That's exactly right. So the person who's an overachiever or a high achiever who exceeds expectations expects every year they're going to be able to do that. Well, if we keep raising expectations, pretty soon somebody will have ascended to become a god. And so what we have to do is set a reasonable standard for this stuff. I think to have quantifiable things, meets expectations or high performer, those are good things. Exceeds expectations or outstanding sometimes are tough standards to live up to. In addition, sometimes people don't like to see it, but if you have poor performance and you were below expectations or completely unsatisfactory, those could be criteria which would mean we're going to have to develop that person or we may have to fire them in the long run. We also have what we call a behaviorally anchored rating scale, and that means we're scoring people based on demonstrated behavior in the workplace. So, for example, it's still a graphic rating scale because we have a 1 to 5, but check it out. We actually have some criteria to go along with this. If somebody gets an unsatisfactory rating as customer service, they argue with the customer about sustainability, the suitability of the requested product, as opposed to outstanding. They use positive phrases to explain the product. So we've got quantitative things that we can use to rate qualitative behavior, behavioral types of ratings. That's called a bars. So in terms of other ways we can rank people or rate people, we can rank them. Guys, here's a question for you. If I had 2 ways to score you in this class, one is I'm going to look at every one of your papers individually. Sarah, if I had a way I was either ranking everybody individually or if I was making you all in a forced distribution, which is more fair to you guys as individuals? If I'm putting you in forced ranking or if I'm evaluating you strictly on your individual performance, which is more fair? Yes. Exactly right. People do not like ranking because it means somebody's a winner and somebody's a loser. It's good in certain professions, highly competitive professions, for example. One in particular where people like ranking, what might it be?
Sales.
Exactly right. Because the number one salesperson gets the big bonus at the end of the year. So ranking and forced distribution, very similar concepts. Forced distribution means that you're going to definitely have winners and losers, and it means you're grading on a curve. It means that you are saying you're taking the ranking concept to the next level, and you're basically saying you're either a high, average, or a low performer, and we may even have quotas for who we put into each of those categories. So here's an example. Again, the wonderful central tendency. what we tend to do when we rate people in this way is about 40% of people end up in the middle of the curve anyway. It's a standard distribution, just like you learned in Dr. Miko's statistics class. All right, this is an important distinction to make because it's something that people mess up on. All right, critical. The word critical, does that have a positive or negative connotation? It does. Nobody likes being criticized. On the same token, if something's crucial, we also say it's mission critical. That's a critical element in your education. It's a critical thing for you to think about. A critical incident is neither positive nor negative. It means it is a defining moment, and it means your manager keeps track of things that you did well or not well and writes them down. So they have a critical incident method. For example, if somebody went above and beyond, you write it down. Your manager may also include critical incidents and write an essay about you to tell how your performance was during the year. It's better than a behaviorally anchored scale. In fact, it offers some nuance. Guys, we also have something called management by objectives. We're going to handle this slide. We'll take our first break because we're moving quick today, guys. Management by objectives means you and your manager set the standards by which you're going to be evaluated. It means that we might sit down at the beginning of the year and determine these are my objectives for the year. This is what I want to accomplish. The manager may come back and say, based on the company perspective, these are the things you need to accomplish. So we start together with job review and agreement on our objectives. Then we develop standards. How are you going to evaluate? Well, talking, we're going to evaluate you based on how many courses you teach in your average idea evaluation. Setting of objectives. By what point will I need to have this level of competence? Frequent performance discussions means we're going to talk about this stuff even outside of formal kinds of agreements. So again, it's a specific performance appraisal method that means we're working together to set our objectives. When it comes right down to it, there's not one great way to do performance evaluation. And guys, I know we're moving quick today, and this is the one lecture of the year where I'm really glazing through material. Let's stop for a second for a question or comment about anything. Or just to catch our breath, or to catch my breath. Sir?
What's the cheesiest Christmas movie you've ever seen?
Oh my God. Wow. I think it's called Switchmas. And my mother-in-law was watching it. It's about a Christian kid and a Jewish kid who managed to switch homes for the holidays to experience each other's traditions. And it's like, if the word god-awful were made into a film, it would be that film. I mean, I think if you gave me the choice of like listening to the sound of a cat's tail caught in a rocking chair for an hour or watching that movie, I'd take the cat in the rocking chair. That's how bad that movie is. What about you? What would be in that category for you?
There's this Hallmark film called Snow Globe.
Oh boy.
Snow Globe's like perfect little Christmas village. She gets stuck inside, and it's like Groundhog Day in there. It's just terrible. The acting's awful.
The only way you can survive that as a date night movie is alcohol. I mean, that's just like Hallmark games. You know, there's Hallmark drinking games, right? I'm not telling you to encouraging you to engage in them, but every trope that you see in a Hallmark movie, you take a drink, you will be blitzed by the end of 45 minutes. So anyway, but I didn't say that on purpose. All right, guys, sometimes one method can work for one organization, just like forced ranking and forced distribution works great for sales. Other methods, such as critical incident, might work better in environments such as academia. One of the masters of critical incident is Dr. Fry. He will remember something good you did in January of 2002 that you had forgotten about. I have a letter in my office from Dr. Fry, literally from 20 years ago, where he wrote down something nice about me, and I never forgot. He actually sent me, and I wasn't even working for the man at the time, and he made sure my boss knew that I did something good. Pretty interesting. So managers can decide what's appropriate. If you are trying to train people how to be good performance evaluators, first off, you want to make sure they know what's important in the job. If somebody's evaluating a teacher, they should understand how teacher works. How teacher works. How does teaching work? How does teaching work? What are some of the errors you can make? How can you avoid bias? How do you provide positive and negative feedback? And how do you talk about this stuff? Guys, who's heard of the compliment sandwich? What's the compliment sandwich, Corey?
When you like say something like, "Oh, you look nice, but you messed up on this, but you know you tried pretty hard."
Exactly right. The compliment is the meat between, or I'm sorry, the criticism is the meat between the two compliment buns. So it'd be like, hey, honey, that was really great what you gave me for lunch yesterday. Man, this house is a mess. I can't wait for Christmas. That's a compliment sandwich, maybe with a little description at the end. What some of the rating errors that we make, though, we have different standards. You may have a different standard for excellence than I have for excellence. We have a hard time knowing what good is from one person to another. Then we've got recency and primacy effects. What I want you to think about. If you're giving somebody a performance evaluation, and the day that you're going to give them their evaluation, all of a sudden they cut you off in the parking lot and take the last space. The day you're giving them their performance evaluation, the recency effect there might not play out in their favor. We also have something called central tendency. Again, we give people middle-of-the-road scores. We also have leniency. Sometimes we don't like criticizing people, and conversely, especially if your new managers tend to be hypercritical because they want to prove their salt as a performance manager as well. In terms of rater bias, do I have a bias for or against a particular profession? If I have somebody, for example, who came into my class who had the same major I did, am I going to be biased toward them? With the halo and horns effect. The halo effect is somebody did something nice for me today. And I remembered how good that was. They did a great job on this one particular job. Therefore, anything they do is right. A horn effect is similar in the other direction. Somebody really screwed up on this one project. Therefore, they're pure evil. I'm never giving them a good evaluation. Contrast there means instead of evaluating somebody against the performance standard, you're evaluating them against other people. If you're not a force ranking system, not good. And similar to me means, is somebody like the same sports team as I do? Do they like the same music I do? Are we friends outside of work? That's what comes in. In terms of how we talk about this stuff, guys, one of the biggest things that people should realize in performance evaluation is this is not intended strictly to criticize people. Our bias against performance evaluation comes down to we assume this is all about being criticized. We got to talk about poor performance. We got to tell you what to improve upon. We got to give you a progress path when we're giving you this feedback. But if we don't, all we're doing is criticizing people. Remember this, guys. If all you ever do is tell people what they're doing wrong, they'll only work as hard as possible not to make mistakes. You've got to give people things they're doing right. You got to lift them up as well. That's the heart of performance management. So what should you do if you're giving somebody a performance evaluation? Go in there prepared. Have your documentation. Have read their previous reviews. Have your documentation if you've done critical incidents. Know who you're talking to and if they did a good job or not. Don't compare them to other people. Compare them to them. And we're looking at objective performance. Guys, here's one of the tricks of the industry. You don't have to all be rock stars. In a company, you can have people who are not rock stars who still do a great job against an objective performance standard. If the standard at McDonald's is you got to cook 24 burgers an hour, and we've got Bill over here who's cooking 50, it doesn't mean that Sam, who's cooking 24, is a bad employee. It means Sam's an average employee who's still doing well at what he's supposed to do. So think about objective performance standards. If you are giving people feedback on things to fix, be specific. Tell them what to fix and help them come up with a plan. It's also good to go back to that compliment sandwich, that delicious, beefy compliment sandwich, to make sure you're also emphasizing what people have done right as well. If you're in performance evaluation, and you're the manager, and you are doing all the talking, you're doing it wrong. You got to listen. You also got to stop short of lecturing somebody. If you're just telling people what they're doing wrong, again, you're not going to have a productive conversation in the long run. Unless somebody is a complete knucklehead, in which case you're probably going to fire them anyway. Don't just focus on the negative. And also, at the end of the conversation, if your employee thinks that they did a better job than you did, they're allowed to disagree with you. You can't tell them they can't have their own opinion. They can have their own opinion. But I think it would be a good idea to be upfront with that. Again, don't compare people to other people. So in terms of the whole performance appraisal process in the first place, managers hate them. And the reason managers hate them is because they're in companies that have not taught them how to use them, have not applied them well, and we have this punitive standard. Performance evaluations are nothing but a waste of time. Well, and to be blunt, in some companies they are a waste of time. If a performance management appraisal, a performance appraisal rather, isn't tied to a reward, has no consequence, if there's no honest to God reason to be doing it, all you're doing is wasting somebody's time. If you're in that situation, there's one good thing that can come out of a performance evaluation. Let's put this scenario forth. Let's say that there is no possible way in which somebody, even my best performer, is going to get a raise based on this evaluation. Is there still a reason to get together and talk with them about it? What might be the reason? Raina, you're shaking your head. What might be the reason?
What's the exact situation?
So let's say, for example, you got to do performance evaluations with your staff, and you know there's not any budget for raises this year, and even your best performers are not going to get a raise, no matter how good their evaluation is. Is there a reason to still sit down with them?
No, absolutely. It means a lot for them if you still recognize their job, and it means a lot for what they're going to do in the future. If you sit down with them, they're going to keep trying to do the job they're doing instead of just having it not recognize it all.
Absolutely. At the very least, if you cannot associate appraisals with rewards, make the rewards something non-monetary, even if it's sitting down and telling somebody they matter. And the other part of it is to let employees know what the function of these things are, that they're not just a way to route people out and get them fired. Not saying that they're not used for that process, but let's make sure that employees know that, for example. If you have a good performance management system, it should be something that we can use to make people better and give rewards, administrative rewards, for example. It should be legal. It should be viewed as something that people see as fair and equitable against an objective standard, and that we have some clarity in terms of what makes high, low, and medium performers, for example. And with that being said, at a breakneck pace, we just finished up 10 minutes early for our last lecture together. Guys, I will see you here on Friday for our test. After the test on Friday, I will be asking you to fill out a survey for our community engaged learning. If you have not yet tracked your hours, please do so. Bless you. In case I don't get to say so on Friday, guys, thank you for a great semester. And with that, have a good day.